Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
We've reported many times on so-called truck-eating bridges, but recently we learned of yet another, this one called the Can Opener, located in the town of Delaware, Ohio. But this one is a little different than the others now. It's been named a historic site. I'll talk with Lee Yoakum, Community Affairs Director for Delaware, Ohio. Also on today's program, earlier this year, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, proposed a rule that would increase fees for hazmat haulers. However, that's not the whole story, and the acting administrator at the agency says they would prefer not to raise the fees on small business at all. I'll get the ins and outs of the issue from Tristan Brown, Deputy Administrator at PHMSA. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. The trend of dropping diesel prices continues. The Energy Information Administration recording last week's national average at $3.65 a gallon. That's a little under 4 cents lower than the previous week and the 7th week in a row that the average has dropped. Over that time, the cost for a gallon of diesel has declined more than 21 cents. All 10 regions had prices go down last week, led by New England, where the average dipped by a nickel. As for this week's prices, more of the same. In fact, the ProMiles numbers are nearly identical to EIA's numbers from last week. The national average on the ProMiles.com survey was down just under 4 cents on Tuesday morning compared to the previous week to an average of $3.64 a gallon. Prices also down in all 10 regions. Cheaper fuel is one reason the roadways might be a little busier than normal this Labor Day weekend. Transportation data provider INRIX said Thursday and Friday afternoons will be the worst time to be on the roads, followed by pretty much all day on Monday as people return home from wherever they spent the holiday weekend. And with the national average for a gallon of gas down 42 cents compared to last Labor Day week, more people may be inclined to drive to their destination. As for air travel, AAA anticipates a record weekend. Bookings for domestic travel are running 9% higher than Labor Day last year. The Transportation Security Administration anticipates screening more than 17 million people between Thursday and next Wednesday, which would be a record for the Labor Day period. 5 states in the Southeast have kicked off a pre-Labor Day enforcement blitz. It's called Hands Across the Border. Law enforcement in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee are taking part. The goal is to identify impaired drivers, distracted drivers, and generally unsafe drivers, and take them off the road. Georgia officials say the message is clear across the board: slow down, buckle up, and drive sober and alert before the Labor Day holiday travel period. Hands Across the Border began in 1991 as a friendly wager between the Georgia State Patrol and Florida Highway Patrol to see which agency could limit the number of alcohol-related traffic deaths in their state during the Labor Day travel period. Within 10 years, the other states now taking part joined in. Time now for our weekly check on the spot market, courtesy of Truck Stop this week. Overall rates with fuel down to $2.22. Van and flatbed rates both down a few cents. Reefer up by 1. Load availability down across the board as well. But Brent Hutto, Chief Relationship Officer at Truck Stop, isn't surprised.
The spot market goes up and down wildly. It always does. And so what happens after July 4th is we have this period of about 6 weeks where the marketplace just cools way off. And so all the numbers go down. The pressure in the market goes down. We were at a market demand index of about 60. It's down to a little bit below 50. 50 is about the balance in the new balance in the market. Rates continue to go down, where the overall rate was at like 235. It's now down to 222. It will start to come back as soon as we start to approach holiday season after the end of August.
For a full breakdown of the most recent spot market data with some advice thrown in along with additional information, tune into the show tomorrow. The Biden administration has announced nearly $3.5 million in grants to 27 colleges and other CDL training programs. The money comes via FMCSA's Commercial Motor Vehicle Operator Safety Training Grant Program. The grants are intended to improve roadway safety by providing additional training for current CDL holders, while creating new career pathways for CMV drivers as well. That includes expanding the number of CDL holders possessing enhanced operator safety training, providing opportunities for current or former members of the U.S. Armed Forces, and increasing training opportunities for people from rural, refugee, and underserved communities. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission will be hosting a listening session in October that's focused on the needs of female truck drivers. The listening session is intended to provide a platform for drivers to communicate their personal experiences to the EEOC and offer suggestions on how the agency can better address their unique issues. The virtual listening session runs from noon to 1:30 Eastern Time on Friday, October 4th. The session is off the record and will not be recorded. Real Women in Trucking is calling on female truck drivers who have experienced discrimination, sexual harassment, or sexual assault while on the job to participate in the listening session. The association is offering to tell a driver's story for them if they are not comfortable speaking, but still want their story heard. Anyone wanting to participate must register by September 30th. For more information, we have a link at landlinenow.com. A truck driver is facing charges in Texas after being accused of trying to smuggle nearly a dozen people into the country last week. The Laredo Morning Times reports that John Saez was behind the wheel of a tractor-trailer traveling along Interstate 35 in Webb County last Wednesday. The Texas DPS officer who stopped the semi said Saez was acting nervous and refused a search of the vehicle. U.S. Customs and Border Protection was called out, and they eventually noticed several people attempting to hide in the sleeper berth of the cab. 11 people were detained. Saez was arrested and charged. At last check, he was being held on a $220,000 bond. The co-owner of the Massachusetts trucking company involved in a truck crash that made national headlines has pleaded guilty to charges of making false statements. The U.S. DOT's Inspector General's office says Dunyadar Gasanov co-owned the now-defunct Westfield Transport. For nearly 2 months in 2019, Gasanov admits that he and a co-defendant falsified driving logs in order to evade federal regulations and instructed at least one employee to do the same. Westfield Transport made the news in 2019 when one of its drivers, Volodymyr Zukovsky, hit and killed 7 motorcyclists in New Hampshire. He was later acquitted by a jury following a 12-day trial. While much of the country is still dealing with the last breaths of summer, Colorado is already getting ready for winter. The state is instituting new chain laws for commercial motor vehicles this year. They take effect this Sunday, September 1st. For truck drivers, that means more roadways in which you'll need to carry chains from now through the end of May. The law previously only made that a requirement on I-70 between Dot Cerro and Colorado State Highway 470. Additional roadways have been added to the mix. Violations come with a $50 penalty and $17 surcharge. And finally, a jersey belonging to Babe Ruth shattered the record for the most expensive piece of sports memorabilia ever auctioned on Sunday. Someone paid more than $24 million for the jersey, which the Bambino wore against the Chicago Cubs during Game 3 of the 1932 World Series. This is the game where, as legend claims, Ruth called his shot. In response to hecklers, Ruth reportedly pointed deep into the center field stands and then hit the next pitch exactly in that direction for a home run. The Yankees went on to win that game and the World Series, the final championship of Ruth's legendary career. Years after retiring, Ruth donated the jersey to a golf partner. It was then sold 3 separate times over the years, most recently in 2005 for $940,000. That's Lane Line Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. OOIDA is seeking the names and addresses of military personnel serving overseas so we can send them care packages through Truckers for Troops. Call that information in to Nikki Johnson at 816-229-5791 or email it to troops@ooida.com. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Space Age Castle Rock Truck Stop in Castle Rock, Washington. That's located at Exit 52 off Interstate 5. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss a truck-eating bridge in Ohio with Lee Yoakum of the City of Delaware. And we'll find out what new fees hazmat haulers might pay with Tristan Brown, Deputy Administrator at PHMSA. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Every year, 28 million people are trafficked globally. The Your Roads, Their Freedom campaign seeks to raise awareness in the transport industry. Truck and bus drivers, be vigilant on the roads. If you see something suspicious, text 233-733 or be free.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Truckdown verified, vendor qualified. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. We've reported many times on so-called truck-eating bridges, but recently we learned of yet another, this one called the Can Opener, located in the town of Delaware, Ohio, just north of Columbus. Like so many of its fellow truck-consuming structures, the Can Opener has developed a reputation, and also like other such bridges, the community where it is located has taken many steps to try to cut back on the collisions. But unlike other truck-eating bridges, the Can Opener is now listed by one company as a historic site. I spoke about the bridge with Lee Yoakum, Community Affairs Director for the city of Delaware, Ohio.
It's on our west side, so US or Ohio 37, State Route 37 runs east and west through Delaware, and this is on the west side of Delaware as you're entering the city.
Okay. Now, this may seem obvious, but I think it's important to explain why this is a problem. What about the bridge makes it so that so many trucks hit it?
Well, when it was installed, and that was probably 70 years ago at least. I don't have the exact date, but we've seen archival photos that would suggest that the bridge is probably 70 to 75 years old. The height was 12 foot 7 inches, and it's been that has been the issue since then, and fine for our standard vehicles and things like that to the city, but for semis, this has been a problem for many years, and especially as Delaware's grown and US 37 has gotten busier, it's become more acute and something the city has had to deal with.
I'm curious about Highway 37. Is that a major artery or a major freight corridor?
Yes, it is. Outside of the city, Delaware is serviced by, we're like a lot of county seat cities in that it's a kind of a coming together of various roadways. But in Delaware, we're serviced primarily east and west by US 36 and Ohio 37. And then US 23 runs north and south kind of along the spine of the city. So it is busy. It services, to the west of here, Marysville, the Honda plant, and farther west, Indiana, and then east of the city, same way. So, yeah, it is, Mark. It's active. And that's why, we've signed this multiple places going miles outside of the location of the bridge. I think we have 7 signs with flashing lights in one direction and 6 signs with flashing lights in the other direction, warning that there is a 12 foot 7 bridge, at this location, and directing trucks where, this is where you need to turn. We can only do so much. And ultimately it comes down to, the person behind the wheel. And so that's kind of been our struggle.
We've done stories on a number of bridges like this around the country. Davenport, Iowa has a pair of bridges on what used to be US 61. Here, where we're located in Kansas City, there's a bridge over what was US 24, and they actually moved the highway to try and cut back on the bridge strikes. But some of these get hit, every few months. Some of them get hit monthly. How often would you say your bridge is getting hit?
So before our latest iteration of signage, which was pretty robust and installed in 2018, we were averaging, I looked it up, probably between 10 and 12 a year. So about one a month around. It would vary. Maybe you'd have 8 or 9 one year and 11 or 12 another. So in that 10, 11 ballpark. That's just the ones that struck the bridge and were so wedged that it required police assistance to extract them, our cleanup crews, and all that. Maybe a tow truck to get them out from underneath. There were other instances where a semi would maybe come up to the bridge, see there was an issue, slow down and try to go under it slowly and get wedged. And doesn't require as much, cleanup or anything like that. And then there were the third category would be those that approach the bridge, see it, and then stop in time and then turn around, either with assistance from police or on their own. But to your question, between 10 and 12 a year. In 2018, we were approached by our state transportation organization, the Ohio Department of Transportation. They had funding for what we installed, and I don't know how widespread these are around the country, a laser detection device at 2 places, east and west of the bridge, that will, if activated, will trip a larger flashing sign that hangs over the roadway. And it's only activated when it's tripped. Since we've installed that, we have seen it has been effective. We haven't stopped it completely, but the number of strikes has gone down. And more importantly, the number of turnarounds has increased. So it's not foolproof, but it has been effective to where we're seeing between 6 and 8 a year instead of 10 to 12. And the turnarounds, we looked at a 12-month period. We had 60 documented instances where the vehicles, around 60, where they saw it, stopped, turned around. So, and that's just, Mark, that's just documented during daylight, while we were on staff to have we're able to monitor that and get updates when the team is in the, wherever they control the traffic devices from. So, they're probably more than 60, but we were able to document around 60 turnarounds over the course of a year. So it has been effective, but it's not foolproof.
As I mentioned earlier, we've talked with people in other places that have what we've come to call truck-eating bridges. And, sometimes the drivers are unfamiliar with the area. They don't know where they are. They're just following a GPS or a map. Sometimes, for example, in Davenport, Iowa, the bulk of the drivers getting caught were local. And in fact, the police chief there told me, I think, as I recall, that these are people that drove under it with their cars and they just, oh, that's right, I'm in a big truck now, I can't do this. Do you know what the case is with your bridge? Are these mainly unfamiliar drivers, or are there a lot of locals that are getting caught?
It's a really good question, Mark, and it is important to point out that it's of course the big tractor trailers get all the eyeballs and the smartphone photos and video, but we're also seeing cases of people in renting a U-Haul or something like that, and not just when I get into something like that, I'm not used to that, but it's not something I always think about. Or motor coaches, these big motorhomes now with the air conditioners on the roof, taking the tops off of those. So we do see that. Anecdotally, I'm trying to think what our police have told me is more often than not, I just didn't see the signs. And again, we have 13 warning signs total, each with a flashing light and this big overhead, almost like a scoreboard over the roadway. Is there so much sign pollution out there that these are getting lost? Are there too many distractions in the cab that you're not seeing the signage? We don't know for sure, but that is what we hear the most, is we just didn't see it. Or they're just not familiar with the vehicle they're driving because it's a rental or something like that.
You mentioned all the countermeasures that you've taken, and it sounds like you've done quite a bit. Is the city considering more? And if so, what more do you think is needed to cut this back to zero or close to it?
The question that is asked a lot by our residents and our keyboard warriors on social media is just lower the road. If you just would lower the road or raise the bridge, you wouldn't have this problem. Well, just to lower the road is multi-million-dollar project. You're talking about, that's a major construction project on a state route where it's located in the city of Delaware. Would be a residential. It's in a residential area where it comes through the city as 2 lanes. We don't have the money for that, And then there's on top of that, there's all the drainage and then you're working with the railroad to make sure they're okay with just serving the base under their bridge. So it's something that gets tossed around every so often, but it isn't something that right now we have the money for as far as lowering it. Raising the bridge, again, you're working with the railroad. If you know the railroads at all, that's like, working at times with the IRS or something. I mean, it can be kind of overwhelming as far as the bureaucracy. So we do look at that, but it's just not realistic right now. Our city is struggling to keep up with capital projects, the roadway improvements. And it just doesn't seem like, to us, it seems like we need to do the best job we can to provide enough warning and hope that through efforts like this, reaching out directly to those drivers that might be coming to the city of Delaware with that kind of communication. So, I don't know, Mark. It's a good question of what else we could do. And, at this point, unless the railroad were to contact us tomorrow or on Monday and say, hey, we need to replace that bridge, then we would say, all right, as long as you're doing that, here's what we're going to do, because any kind of bridge replacement would be on our dime, not on theirs.
One last thing I wanted to ask you, and this is what actually caught my attention initially about this. I was reading that the bridge is now showing up on Google Maps on their app as a historic site. Can you explain what happened there?
I wish I could. Again, if you can explain Google, I don't know how, I don't know how it works. I don't know how that designation, we don't know how that designation, we saw it pop up on some local community social media, and, everybody got a chuckle out of it. And some of the local media were interested in it. I don't know how that happened, but again, hey, as I said, if this helps get the word out, if this, then it's a good thing. Great. And we support it. And every little thing helps. So it's just, this is just one of those things where we're kind of Delaware is an old city. We're challenged. We're an older city and we're a mature city in that we're 215 years old. So you got a lot of highway and roadway configurations that made sense 50 years ago or so that don't make any sense now. And then you're also a growing city and you have a lot of that traffic and growth and things like that. So it's very much a challenge, but it's kind of one of those quirky things that's, part of Delaware lore now.
Well, Lee, thank you very much for all the information. I sure appreciate it.
And Mark, thanks for having us on again, and appreciate your efforts to get the word out, and we'll hope collectively it has an impact. No pun intended.
That was Lee Yoakum, Community Affairs Director for the city of Delaware, Ohio, talking about the town's truck-eating bridge called the Can Opener. One other note. It's best to do what you can to avoid collisions with these structures, not only because of the damage to your truck, but also possible fines. Truckers whose rigs collide with the Can Opener Bridge in Delaware, Ohio, could face hefty fines from the city, rising as high as $1,000. You can keep up on various local and state issues across the nation that affect truckers by going to the website landline.media. Just go to the news menu at the top and click on Daily News by State. Again, that's at the website landline.media. At that same website, you can find information on road closings and conditions for each state by using the Resources tab at the top of the page, and then clicking on Road Conditions for Truckers. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
Landline Now, welcome back. Earlier this year, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, proposed a rule that, as stated on the Federal Register, would increase fees for hazmat haulers, with small businesses such as owner-operators having their fees raised from $250 to $375. However, that's not the whole story, and the Deputy Administrator, also the Acting Administrator at the agency, says they would prefer to not raise the fees on small businesses at all. Tristan Brown is the Deputy Administrator at PHMSA. I spoke with him recently about the proposal and what the agency would prefer to do on the issue. PHMSA wants to increase the rates for its federal registration fee assessment program. Most of our listeners are one-truck operators or small fleet operators. So what are the rates right now for a one-truck operation, and what level does the agency want to raise it to?
Yeah, so let's just start that we fund hazardous materials and emergency planning and response grants, basically firefighters, training firefighters and emergency responders when a hazmat-related incident happens, truck, train, plane, vessel. And their response, their training comes through federal funding from these user fees. And through multiple pieces of bipartisan legislation over the last few years, we've been directed to increase the grants that fund firefighters. And the only way we can do it is through user fees. So we're actually trying not to raise user fees on small businesses for especially one truck operators. Currently, the fee is $250 per year to be a hazmat registered transporter. And the proposed increase, and it is a proposal, we're really looking for feedback of how to do this, because right now there's a cap on large businesses that really prevents us from getting to the increase in funding that we need to fund the firefighters and first responders. And so our hope is there's bipartisan support in Congress to actually increase the fees on large businesses that can more than afford an increase in fees. In fact, there hasn't the top limit for large businesses was $5,000 back in 1990, and actually got reduced to be capped at $3,000. The Norfolk Southerns of the world, the Amazons, the Walmarts, those guys can afford, higher fees. We've been focused on how can we not raise fees for the smaller businesses and still fund these grant programs for first responders. So we hope, engaging, the independent truck drivers and others to make sure they're aware of how and why this is happening, and their voices are heard by, those who create the rules for us and tell us what to do there in Congress.
So just to clarify, are you hoping through this proposal to not raise the fees at all on small businesses? That's
what we had originally proposed. So back in 2021, Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act said, PHMSA, you are authorized to increase your grant funding. In other words, to raise fees for the grant funding. And so we said, how can we do this? We don't want to raise any fees on small businesses. How else can we do it? And we didn't get a lot of good feedback, mostly because, of course, no one wants their fees raised, right? So none of those large businesses said, well, just raise our fees. Even if we did raise them to the maximum from, basically $2,600, which is what large businesses are charged for now, to $3,000, which is the statutory limit. We're not allowed to charge anything more than that for the large businesses until Congress changes the law. That wouldn't get us to the increase in funding for emergency responders. So we came back and said, all right, well, what if we just, since we haven't updated this fee, I think since 2006 for small businesses, what if we just said, all right, if we were to adjust it every year, just based on, the change in the value of money, what would it be at? And so that's how we ended up with the additional $125, update. But obviously that's a big jump, and we'd prefer if we could keep the small business fees where they are and just raise large businesses fees. We can only do that if Congress acts. So, we're hamstrung on that front, but certainly engaging, in this discussion with your listeners, Mark, maybe that can give us another avenue rather than focus on small businesses. We have far more small businesses than we do large businesses, and therefore, a small, I say a small increase, this is a 50% increase. So, that's small relative to, a $400 increase for large businesses. But of course, relatively, it's a big increase for small businesses, and we'd prefer not to do that.
You mentioned earlier that this is to raise money for a grant program that primarily, and correct me if I'm wrong if I've understood this incorrectly, but primarily helps firefighters, the people that would deal with any kind of problem with hazmat should it occur on the road. I'm kind of curious, have you had more demand for these grants? Is that why the agency's looking at it? Is it just a matter of costs increase over time, or what is behind the need for an increase?
Yeah. So, over the years, there hasn't been an increase in funding for quite some time. And certainly when you have an incident, we have serious incidents, fatalities, we know that there is a greater need. We are not keeping up with the demand from, it's not just firefighters, it is, sometimes police, highway patrol, those guys who are running to an emergency. And they have no idea, if there's a truck driver, stuck in a vehicle and exposed to a hazmat, and how to protect themselves and to protect the public. So that is really our goal. In terms of, we're nowhere near meeting the demand, and we have not been meeting the demand. So it was really just Congress saying, hey, you need to keep up with the demand for training first responders, which we had there's always been a greater need. So that was really the impetus, was Congress taking that action in 2021. And then they reaffirmed it in 2024 saying, all right, you're allowed to raise these fees even higher. So really affirming that what we had engaged with the public on how do we do it, Congress said, all right, you need to raise the funding yourself.
I'm curious, assuming here that you're raising the fees enough to meet the demand for these grants and probably no further than that, how much overall money do you hope to raise? How much money is needed in order to get these grants up to where they need to be?
Yeah, so for all states, we're currently right near the $30 million mark. For all states, Congress authorized $47 million. So when you think about, 1 in 10 goods that are transported in the United States, valued in the trillions of dollars, are classified as a hazardous material. And therefore, we need to use that money to prepare first responders of all types all over the country in, rural areas and urban areas and everything in between to deal with and prepare for hazardous materials incidents. And that means a huge incident like East Palestine, Ohio, the Norfolk Southern incident like that, where you have to evacuate entire communities, as well as an incident where, Northwest Ohio, there were 3 separate hazmat incidents involving trucks, just this past week in which 4 people were killed with the release of hazardous materials there. So, it is a big job to try to mitigate the risk. And ultimately, it's the workers, the first responders, and the public that we're trying to keep safe.
I want to talk a little bit here from kind of the individual trucking operations perspective, and I only ask this because I know somebody out there is asking it or thinking it. I understand the agency allows people to pay up to 3 years in advance. So assuming a change were to go into place, if someone were to pay before the change and do 3 years, would they have to pony up for the additional fee, or would the payment that they made previous to the change suffice?
Very good question. The last thing we want to do is create an additional burden on small business. So this is still in a proposal phase. And certainly there is bipartisan legislation that Congress is considering right now to raise the fees. That would really eliminate the need to do some of what we're doing here, or at least cause us to change what we're doing here. So in that case, I think it's still a little bit premature. This is just in a proposal phase, but fees apply according to the fee structure ultimately established by the regulation at the time of payment. So once the proposal goes into effect, those who paid in advance would have up to the time of compliance to make the difference. We typically allow an additional compliance period. In other words, that even when this is finalized, which is still quite some time away, there would still be additional time after then before it's actually the clock starts, so to speak. So this is not a situation where folks need to urgently, pay in advance or even really consider that. This is a time where you basically do what you're doing, Mark, which is get the word out about why we're doing this, what alternatives are out there. We haven't finalized anything. We'd really love to work with, the OIDAs of the world, the trucking associations, to make sure we are doing, we are getting everybody prepared for an emergency event, but doing it in a fair way, and everybody's paying their fair share. I think most small businesses don't create a risk to the public at the level that large businesses do. So we really prefer to focus on the large business, but I appreciate the question to help maybe assuage, maybe immediate concerns that people might have.
Considering the freight market as it is currently and the very small profit margins that many of these smaller companies operate under, obviously even a small fee can have an impact on their financial viability. To what extent did that figure into the proposed fee structure that you're looking at?
Oh, hugely. I mean, as I was saying, before we even proposed anything, we did what was called an advanced proposal. In other words, we're going to propose questions that would inform how we might propose the changes to the fee. So we did that years ago. We just, as I was kind of explaining, without a change in the law, we don't have many options here. So our big goal was not increasing fees for small businesses, but we couldn't get to the increased grant funding if we didn't change small business fees at all. Then we sort of looked at, okay, well, if we had just kept up with the value of money changing over time, what would that bring us to? And that's ultimately how we got to the number of $375, just because we haven't changed these fees in almost 20 years, right? So certainly if you were to apply what the value of money was back in 2006, you might actually be right at the same fee that we're proposing here. Nevertheless, to your point, Mark, we'd prefer not even to raise the fees at all on small businesses. So that's the preferred approach.
That was Tristan Brown, the Deputy Administrator of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, talking about a notice of proposed rulemaking by the agency that would raise fees for hazmat haulers. After a short break, we'll have more of our conversation with Deputy Administrator Brown. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Before the break, I was talking with Tristan Brown, the Deputy Administrator of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, about a notice of proposed rulemaking by the agency that would raise fees for hazmat haulers. We now continue that conversation in progress. Outside of the proposed or possible fee increases, does this proposal call for any other changes in this system?
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we're focused on here. But, we do raise the issue, and we did with our past advanced notice of proposed rulemaking, that ideally this would really be based on risk. So if you're hauling around a very innocuous hazardous material product, ideally fees would reflect that. So they could actually be lower in an ideal world, right? And then if you're hauling around something that's really dangerous, then that poses a greater risk on the public. So that should be, that should potentially increase the fee. Now, how to do that would be tough, right? So we certainly value the input on that front as well. As again, this is the proposal stage, so this is really a chance to get feedback on how to be more fair in doing the work that Congress has told us to do, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. One of the other aspects of this that caught my attention is it appears, at least from what I read, and I could be wrong here and correct me if I am, that this proposal is looking at electronic-only registration and fee payment, that this would all be done online. Is there a concern that some of the older or less savvy, tech-savvy truckers might not have the skills to do this online, or those with lower incomes might not even have internet access?
No, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we currently require a paper copy. And so this allows for an electronic copy or a paper form. And so that is another component of this, and it really does try to increase that flexibility for users and truck drivers out there.
What's the next stage in this process?
So that will then take a look at the comments that we get. We'll respond to them, and then we will engage on that. And I should clarify too on that last subject too, that is something we're seeking feedback on. I did mention that currently a paper copy is required, and so electronic only payments would be required. But we'd like the feedback though on how that would play out for folks, to your point. But we'll consider those comments, and then we have some a process to make sure we consider small business impacts. We do a cost benefit analysis with how this impact the benefits for this, account for the costs that they impose. And then the rule could be finalized. I mean, realistically, that's not. We update our timelines every 6 months or so, but you could expect an updated timeline sometime next year. At the earliest. So this is we still have the public comment period here, and we'll be glad to, in addition to, getting public comments directly, we're going to engage with the trade associations that represent the trucking industry and others to make sure we get this a rule that is fair and right, and really appreciate the chance to talk to your listeners.
Okay. Just one last question I have, and I just want to get this clarified for people out there. There's always the concern that something like this can be imminent, but whatever happens, we are talking potentially years out before there is actually a change. Am I correct in that?
That's a reasonable estimate. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is not something that is happening in the immediate future in terms of, in the next few, immediate months here.
Okay. Well, as I said, that's all I have. Is there anything else that you want to add, or you think maybe I didn't ask about that I should have on this issue?
No, I think I just wanted to be clear. We've got about 34,000 hazmat registrants. Right now we get about 700 of them that prefer paper checks. So we are moving in that direction, but we do, to your point, we really do want to be as flexible as we can. So, but we also understand that not everybody, lives in a place, part of the big push across the government these days is getting more access to, the internet and electronic communications. And so we are trying to both keep up with that and make sure we're not creating new problems for folks. The whole goal of this is to keep truck drivers safe, keep the public safe, keep our heroic first responders safe. And we really appreciate the opportunity to engage with the trucking community on how to best do that. And so, just really appreciate your invitation to chat, Mark. And, as I mentioned, we do a lot of other work in the hazmat community, and in particular with the trucking industry and the intermodal industry. And a big focus is how do we improve the efficiency of our overall system and really honor the incredible work of truck drivers. And so I just want to say thank you to your listeners for the work they do every day to bring the goods that I consume every day to market and to keep our economy trucking.
Excellent. Thank you, sir, very much for your time.
Thank you.
Again, that was Tristan Brown, the Deputy Administrator of the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, about a notice of proposed rulemaking by the agency that would raise fees for hazmat haulers. One other note. The comment period on the proposed rulemaking regarding higher hazmat fees closed on August 22nd. However, Brown said that for those who have something they want to contribute to that discussion, the door is still open.
We'll accept late comments, though. And I just tell you, if folks are thinking of commenting on, in terms of this would be not a preferable increase, I hear you. We agree. Alternative is either changing the law or some other middle of the road approach, like maybe create a new category of medium-sized businesses. And then we'd have to redefine what that means. But our preference is, I think, what most of your listeners is, which is to not increase these fees, is the idea.
Again, you can make your views known online through the regulations.gov website. We'll have a direct link to where you can do that on our website, landlinenow.com. For Landline Now, I'm Mark Reddick. If you want to make your voice heard on any of the issues we discuss here on the show, you should call your representative and both of your U.S. senators. To call any member of Congress, all you have to do is dial the U.S. Capitol switchboard. That phone number is 202-224-3121. Provide the operator your zip code, and they can connect you directly to the office of both your senators and your U.S. congressman. Again, that phone number is 202-224-3121. You can also make contact with those lawmakers by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. At that website, just go to the button that says Contact Your Representatives. Meanwhile, if you want to contact your state officials about an issue closer to home, you can get their contact information through the same website, fightingfortruckers.com. Just go to the top right-hand side of that page and click on Contact Your Representative. Scroll down to find links to state officials' contact information. If it doesn't appear, click on the button that says Continue. And you can also get that contact information by calling the membership department here at OOIDA. Just dial 816-229-5600. 5791 during business hours. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
ULSD is hurting your engine. Fight back with Howe's Diesel Defender. Get the most powerful cleaning and maximum lubricity to protect and extend the life of your entire system. At a guaranteed increase in fuel economy, and you can't go wrong with Howe's.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a CAT scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy when you're truck on a CAT scale.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.